Hi, how's it going? My name is Michaela. I'm a PhD student from the University of Tübingen, but I'm originally from New Zealand. And today I wanted to answer like a bunch of questions about studying in Germany and the different questions that someone might have before they start studying in Germany, or something that might weigh into whether they decide to come to Germany or not. I think this is going to be the last one for a while in my studying in Germany kind of series that I've been doing, and I've got a few other things that I want to talk about, but I feel like this is the last big thing that I wanted to cover. And I've got a bunch of questions that I wanted to go through. Obviously this is very catered towards a humanities degree, and if you're doing anything like history, ancient history, I think it covers other things like anything in the philosophy department, sociology, that kind of thing. I could be wrong, so don't take my word for everything and definitely go look it up yourself if you are looking into it. But I just wanted to cover most of the basics because it's stuff that I didn't know about before starting my PhD, and some of it would have been nice to know, but I just didn't have access to the information, or it's not stuff that people really talk about because it's so different to the rest of the world, that I thought that why not talk about it from my experience. I don't know what the order of this is going to be like, but we'll just go through them. So the first question is, how long is a PhD in Germany? This was the first thing that really shocked me about doing a PhD in Germany. So in the US and the UK and Australia and New Zealand, you pretty much have set times for your PhD. It's generally UK, Australia and New Zealand, it's about 3 years. And the US, it's about 5 years, because you have the first 2 years, which are classes, and then you get your last 3 years, which is researching for your PhD. The UK, Australia and New Zealand, it's just 3 years. You don't have the classes because you have to do the masters beforehand. It's not like joined in, but you have to do pure research for 3 years. And the majority of people in these circumstances do it for 3 years. This is usually because of funding reasons, but also that's kind of what is expected. There's a very big push for just getting it done. Some people extend out to a 4th year, and even less normal I think is extending out to a 5th year, but I personally haven't met anyone that's taken more than 5 years in these circumstances. Same with the US, you can extend it out, and in some cases you can get funding extensions, otherwise you start teaching. But again, I don't know that many people that extend it out just because of the financial cost. Germany though is slightly different. So if you've listened to any of my other talks so far, or like conversations that we've had around studying in Germany, it's about 150 euros a semester to study here. It's very, very cheap, and that's as an international student. And you basically don't have a set time of when you have to be done. So I have said to them that I'll do about 3 years, but I'm anticipating it's actually going to be about 4 years, just because of how my first year went. It wasn't great. I got very sick and I was working a lot, and things just didn't work out exactly how I thought they were going to work out. So I think it's going to be about 4 years. But I know people who, because you just keep paying the matriculation fee, you can keep being enrolled, there's not really any pressure. I know some people who study for about, I think 5 to 6 years seems to be about the average. But I know people that have studied 8 years, one person who was, I think, in their 10th year, and one person who was in their 15th year and just kept getting new jobs and just kept doing it. But I cannot imagine doing one topic for 15 years, so that is not my plan. So basically, long story short, you can do your PhD as long as the university will accept you and as long as you keep paying, but I'm aiming for about 4 years because of a couple of other reasons for what happens after the PhD, but I also just don't want to be doing this for years and years, because the research gets on and more people publish stuff, and it's more likely that people will be publishing on your topic, and it's just good to get it done, in my opinion. I might as well follow that by saying what is the structure of a PhD. This is going to be a bit of a quick addendum to the last question, but in New Zealand and the UK and Australia, there is a 1-year candidacy. And so when you first get enrolled into the university, you apply with a proposal. You've got a year to research as much as you can. And at the end of the first year, you have to give a presentation to a panel, usually in front of the department as well. It's like in a seminar series. And you present everything that you've done that year, and they ask you questions about it and see if it's still a worthwhile topic. And if you pass that, you become a PhD student, and then you've got your following 2 years to keep researching. That is essentially giving you 1 year to see if your topic is actually worthwhile or if it needs to be changed, and kind of gives you an out if it's not going how you planned, but also it gives you a good checkup on how much you've been able to research so far. But in Germany, you're just straight in as a student. There's no year of candidacy, there's no at the end of your first year giving a presentation. You're just a student and you're just researching. So they recommend that you should present at least once a year in the seminar series, just to get feedback on your research and to make sure that you've done something. But there is no rules or regulations around that, at least in my department in medieval history. So I presented in my seminar series in my first year, I think about 7 months in, because there was a international conference that was going on that I presented at. And also during my PhD, I've presented about 4 or 5 times already on different topics, of course, but I have had the experience of presenting and my supervisor recognizes that, so I've kind of fulfilled that requirement. So the next question is, what are the different ways of doing a PhD in Germany? This is something that's quite different to what I'm used to in New Zealand, and so I thought that I'd talk about this. So there are 5 different ways that I know of that you can do a PhD in Germany. The first one is to have a position in the department called a Stelle, and that is normally where you do, I think, 50% time doing admin and teaching alongside doing your PhD, and you're funded by the department itself to do the PhD. Well, you're funded for the position and you earn enough that you can kind of cover your PhD. That's what the agreement seems to be. There's also project funding, where there's a wider project that people in the department are working from, funded by like the DFG or something. I'm not sure, to be honest, I'm not a part of one of those, but there are different like governmental funding and different foundations that you can apply to be part of a broader project, and there's anywhere from like 5 to 15 to 20 people as a part of that project. If they're a long project, then it can go on for multiple years and they can have multiple intakes of people. So I know somebody who's coming to the end of one project and he was in the, I think, 3rd or 4th intake of that project. So there have been a lot of people that have gone through this, and he was able to be funded by that, and that pays relatively well. From people that I've spoken to who've been project funded, the funding is about 2,000 to 3,000 euros a month, which is a lot more than if you're funded by other means, but they also kind of expect a little bit more. You're not in your own individual bubble, like you need to be working in with other people, and there are different things that you have to do in terms of going to seminar series or being a part of research groups and that kind of thing. Which brings me to the next one, which is scholarship funding. So it's a little bit similar to the project funding, except that you're doing your own individual topic and you'll apply to a specific foundation, whether it be the Studienstiftung, which is a kind of like a research excellence group, or the Gerda Henkel Foundation, which is a history specific scholarship. You've got political parties like the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, or the Rosa Luxemburg Scholarship is another political foundation. You also have religious foundations, so you've got a Protestant scholarship and a Catholic scholarship that you can apply to, and these seem to be anywhere between 750 euros to 1,500. I mean, that's on average, it's not every single one. It also changes between undergraduate and PhD. PhDs, you generally get a little bit more money, and you can also apply for a family allowance on top of that. I think it's a certain amount for each child and a certain amount for a spouse, and they sometimes cover health insurance and come with a whole bunch of extra benefits. You can also do self-funding with matriculation, so you pay your own way essentially, and you have to get a visa if you're an international student based on your money. I talked about that a little bit in the last video, where you have to have a certain amount in a blocked account in order to get the visa, or in a bank account, and just show that you've got proof of means or a job. And you can get a job as a Hiwi at the university, or I mean pretty much any other job to show that you can earn enough money. And you pay for matriculation, which is different at each university. At Tübingen it's about 150 euros a semester, and that gives you access to the library, you get an ID card, you get support from the university, you can attend courses run by the university, you can also attend classes, so if you need to learn German or French or Latin or digital humanities or anything like that, you have rights to go to that class if you're matriculated. You can also do self-funding without matriculation, where you're here and you're doing your own project, but you aren't enrolled in the university. There's essentially, at least when I applied, I assume it's still like this, but there's 2 levels of applications that you can do. You first apply to the department to say that I want to be enrolled in the Department of Philosophy, for example, which is our broader bracket for the humanities. So you apply there, and there's not a cost associated with that. You're essentially just saying, I want to be recognized as someone who is roughly in line with this university, and my supervisor is a part of this department. Once you get that, if you want to, you then apply for the university to be enrolled as a student, and that's the matriculation. That's where you pay the 150 euros each semester. That gives you the ID card, the access to the library, and all that kind of stuff. You don't have that if you don't matriculate, but it also means you don't have to pay. So some people do that just to get access to the supervisor without paying for the university affiliation. So based on all of that, there is a lot of ways for you to access university education in Germany, whether it be through getting a position at the university, whether it's funding from a project or a scholarship, or whether it's self-funding and having different relationships with the department. So the next thing that I wanted to answer is what languages are required for a PhD. Obviously, I can only talk about medieval history in this circumstance, but I do know that each degree has its own requirements. So in my circumstance, I needed to have 2 modern languages at the B2 level. So I'm modern language, English is my mother tongue, and then German I've got B2 for, and then B2 for, wow. German I've got the level of B2. And then because I'm doing medieval history, I had to have Latin. You can either get the Latinum equivalent, which is kind of the end of high school university entrance exam that you do to say that your Latin is a high enough ability to be able to work with the sources that you have to work with. And that is one requirement that you have to have in Germany that you don't have to have elsewhere. I think in the US they might be a bit more strict about it, and some courses in the UK you have to have a Latin exam for. In New Zealand you don't have to have Latin, which I think is a problem, but you can learn it while you're doing your PhD. Same thing in Australia. I think I didn't need to have Latin to be accepted to the course that I was accepted to, but they want you to learn Latin during the course. I know with some other degrees you have to have 2 modern languages outside of your mother tongue, and they have to be at a B2 level. German also has to be at a C1 level if you're doing classes. So like I think if you're doing a master's or an undergraduate, you have to have C1 German, just to make sure that you can actually understand the lectures and work with academic content, but I am not too clued up on that. Another thing that is different between Germany and most other places that I know of in the world is that your defense is actually graded and your PhD thesis is graded. So in New Zealand and Australia and the UK and I think the US, but don't quote me on this, is that you just have a pass or fail of your PhD, and the main thing is how many corrections you get. So you can either get a pass with no corrections, a pass with minor corrections, and a pass with major corrections, and then there's a fail. Those are the ones that I know of, at least. in Germany, they keep the grading system, so you can get essentially like a first class, so a 1, or you can get a 2, and then there's different points between that, like I think you can get like a 2.5, 1.5, those different things. And it's all based on how good it was, and like the grading system is based on how effectively you wrote and answered the question, but also how many changes you have to make. And that's when it brings in the like summa cum laude and the essentially different gradings that you come out of it. And unfortunately that does affect your ability to get a job afterwards. So you want to be getting a good grade. And it's one thing that I had been really looking forward to, was not having a grading anymore with my PhD. And you kind of go through all the stress of undergraduate and honours and masters, and then you're like, PhD, I just have to write it good enough to pass it. But then I came to Germany and I'm still in the grading system. The next thing that is different between Germany and the rest of the world is that you can pass your defense and you essentially get your graduation, you finish, you get your certificate and everything, but you cannot use the title of doctor until you publish your thesis. And there are different things that you can do. I actually did a video of finding this out and I was panicking because I was like, how the heck am I going to publish my thesis afterwards? Turns out the whole of Germany is built around this, and there are specific publishers. Their whole purpose is to publish theses, but you can also go to bigger publishers like De Gruyter and Brill, and a lot of the university presses also have some understanding of thesis printing, but you can also get book contracts, like proper book contract. So there are different things that you can do. You can either fund it yourself and just pay for a publisher to do the publishing. You can publish it online, you can publish it open access, not open access, or you can get an actual book contract. But basically after your defense you've got 2 years to publish your book, and only then can you take the title of doctor. This is different from the rest of the world where you literally walk across the stage and you are suddenly doctor. But I think it's a good thing, because I know at least in the UK the career market at the moment seems to be biased towards people who have published a book. So I think it's a good thing, while it's daunting, that as part of the German system you have to publish something. And then the final thing that I wanted to talk about was the kind of myth of the double PhD in Germany. This is very specific for Germany itself, and it's something that a lot of people talk about, where there's kind of this idea that you have to do a double PhD in order to get a job in Germany. That is for permanent full-time positions. So if you want to be a professor in Germany, you have to do your PhD, and then you have to do something called a habilitation or a Habilitation. It's about a 4 to 5 year program, and you generally do teaching alongside that. It's a completely different topic from your first PhD, and it also has to be published. But their whole thing is they want you to do 2 different research projects so that you can come out of this showing that you've got broad knowledge, but that you're also well accomplished, well published, in order to get a job. Now, that is not the only way to get a full-time permanent position in Germany. They are becoming a lot more open to the rest of the world, and they are setting up junior professor tracks, but that is the most common track so far, is doing the habilitation. It is a big question around whether it's a good way to do it or not, because a lot of people from overseas don't do that, and then it's really hard to get a job in Germany, like a full-time professorship in Germany, if you haven't got the habilitation. But then if you do the habilitation in Germany and then go overseas, it's kind of, is it worth it or not? And then if you do the habilitation, you no longer have access to apply for the junior track professorship because you're too qualified. So there's a whole bunch of questions around it at the moment in academia about whether it's a good thing or not, but it's a thing, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I know a lot of people who did a different topic for their PhD compared to the habilitation, and they realize that their habilitation is something that they're more interested in rather than kind of setting their focuses on one thing. So I don't know, it's a thing that's different here. On that note, I thought that I would say as well, as part of the defense thing, is that in New Zealand and Australia and the UK with your defense, to the best of my knowledge, at least in New Zealand, you're just defending your topic. So you do your PhD for 3, 4, 5 years, and you submit it and you get a whole bunch of questions, and you spend your whole defense just talking about your PhD topic. In Germany, it's different. You have to show knowledge of a different topic as well. So you spend maybe, at least at the University of Tübingen, you spend about half an hour to an hour talking about and defending your PhD, but then you also have to give about, I think, a half-hour presentation and question time on a different topic. So some people will turn that into an article afterwards, some people will write it up as an article beforehand, but you do need to keep that in mind, that your PhD defense in Germany is not just going to be about your PhD, it's going to be about a broader topic as well. Anyway, that is everything that I have to say. This is a long enough video already, but I thought that I'd answer some of the main questions about studying in Germany and how the structure of it is different compared to other countries. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that it somehow convinced you to come to Germany for a PhD, because I think it's so great here, and I think that they've just got so many opportunities here. But anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I will see you with another video very soon.